Hi there, I'm Owain from 222 and I'm here for DV247 today, and we're going to have a look at the new Traktor Control F1. The F1's an add-on controller, so the idea is that you're going to use it in conjunction with your S4 or your S2 or your X1. What the Traktor Control F1 allows you to do is it allows you to have ultimate control over the remix decks, which are a new feature of Traktor 2.5. So as you open up Traktor, you'll notice now that where before we just had 4 sample slot areas at the bottom here, we've actually got a much larger expanded area. We can hold up to 64 samples within this area now. So you have 4 pages with 4 columns in each page. And within each of those columns, you hold 4 sample slots. Those samples can be absolutely anything you want them to be. They can be an entire track, they can be one-shots, they can be samples, they can be loops, they can be absolutely any audio that you choose them to be. So let's have a look at the F1 and how it's laid out. So as we look at it, we've got 4 filters here at the top. These are high pass filters and low pass filters, depending on what orientation you've got them. You've also got 4 separate volume controls for each one of the sample slots as well. You can play a maximum of 4 samples at any one time from one remix deck. And obviously you can have up to 4 remix decks running at any one time as well. So as we move our way down here, we have this rotary encoder here. This is the main way in which you navigate your way around the F1. We've also got some function buttons down here, which we'll look at later on. And then we've got these pads here. This is a 4x4 matrix giving you 16 pads. Each one of those pads relates to a sample that's happening. And this is how you're going to turn the sample on. At the bottom here, we've got a mute and stop function as well. So let's have a look. How do we get something onto the F1? Well, the F1 comes bundled with remix content, so that gets you up and running straight away, and you can download that from the service centre. So as we enter into Traktor, the first thing we've got to work out how to do is how to browse and navigate our way around our directory. So if we hit the browse button here, the F1's automatically gone into browse mode now. The first thing we've got to get to is we've got to decide where we want to go in our directory. So if I hold down the shift button and move the encoder, you can see that I'm navigating my way through my directory. So if I click down on the encoder, it'll open up my track collection. If you've imported all of the remix content now, you'll find that you've got a new folder that says all remix sets. If you hover over that, what will be presented to you in the middle of Traktor now is all of the remix sets that you can load up. So if you take your finger off of shift and just move the encoder now, this allows you to navigate up and down around. So let's find something and let's load it in. Okay, so once you've found what you wanted, if you push down onto the encoder, it will load it in. If you push out of browse, you've exited out of the browse mode. If you want to check what the focus of the F1 is, i.e. what deck it's looking at the moment, if you hold down shift, you'll notice that it says DA there, which means I'm actually controlling deck A with the F1 at the moment. Obviously I can only control remix decks with the F1. If I wanted to choose another remix deck, let's say I had a remix deck on B, then I would move that over and it would flash up. But as I'm working in A, I'm in the right place at the moment. So let's actually look at what the F1 can do. So if we press a button, that will start a clip firing. As you can see, when I loaded samples in, all of these sample slots became taken up with samples. We've got 4 pages that we can scroll through. It doesn't necessarily mean that each remix set is going to contain 4 whole pages of samples. Some will, some won't, but obviously if you investigate and explore, then you'll find out which ones do and which ones don't. At the moment, when you look at the F1, you can see it's got P1 showing to me. That means that I'm on page 1 of 4 pages. If I move the encoder, I'll go to page 2, page 3, page 4. You can see that I've got some blank sample slots here, so I could fill those with my own samples if I wanted to. If we go back to page 3, we can see that we've got samples on there, and the colours that are on the pads directly respond and relate to the colours that you can see on the clips up here. You can change those colours of the pads, and we'll look at how to do that later on. We'll go back to page 1 because that's the first page of samples that we're interested in. The first thing that you want to find out is you want to look at what sort of quantize setting that you've got on your sample slots. The quantize setting basically means how is that pad going to react when I press it. Is it going to wait for 4 beats before the sample is fired? Is it going to wait for 2 beats? Is it going to wait for 1 beat, and so on? So if I press down the quantize button, straight away, what the F1 jumps into, it jumps into the Quantize mode, and I can change the Quantize setting. At the moment, it's set to 2 beats, okay? It may be I want to have it on 1/4 of a beat. I can go all the way up to 32 beats or 8 bars. Well, I'm going to work on 1/4 of a beat. So if I take my finger back off again, that's taking me out of the Quantize mode. When I press the button now, when I press the pad, the sample will start firing straight away. Okay, and if we look now, I can just bring some other samples in, remembering that I can play 1 sample per column at any one time. Okay, so once I've got those samples running, it may be that I want to mute some of them out. I've got 4 mute buttons at the bottom here. If I press that, it's going to mute whichever sample it relates to. Okay, and you can see that all of those have been taken off then. If I can bring them back in again as well if I want to. If I want to stop the samples, if I hold down the shift button and then press those buttons again, all the samples will stop setting. You'll also notice as well, when I hold down the shift button, it actually gives me a new window. And these are different parameters that I can set per column. These relate to key lock, effects, monitor, and punch. Obviously, Traktor users are going to be familiar with what key lock, effects, and monitor and punch is. In order to switch those on, all I need to do is press the relevant pad, and you'll notice that as the pad lights up, also as well on Traktor as well, you can see that the lights have come on as well. It's entirely up to you as to which ones you have switched on and which ones you have switched off. So once you've got your samples on and you've looked at the Quantize setting, it may be you just want to go ahead and play them, but you can actually change the type or the character of the pad. If I press the type button here, what you'll notice now is that what's displayed in the numeric readout here has changed. If I flick this over now, we have a thing called PL, and that basically means play mode. And what this is relating to is how the pad reacts. You've got 2 choices here. You can either have it so that the pad's on an automatic loop, so that when it reaches the end of the sample, it loops around and plays again, or you can have it so that when you press the pad, it plays to the end of the sample and stops playing. Blue relates to playing to the end of the sample and then stopping. Green relates to loops. So if I wanted to change these 2 pads here to loops, all I would literally have to do is press those and it's done. I'm going to take those off and keep them as just playing and then stopping. If I flick around on the encoder again, TR relates to trigger type. This basically means, do I have to keep my finger on the pad in order for the sample to play, or do I just have to press the pad once and then the sample will play? If the blue colour is highlighted, then it's a case of I only have to press the pad once. If the yellow colour is highlighted, then I have to keep my finger on the sample pad in order for it to fire. And we can have a look at this now. These 2 have been turned to yellow, so they should only occur when I keep my finger on them. Okay, whereas these ones have been set to loops, and also so that they play straight through. So that will just continue playing like that. Remember again, if you want to mute or stop, mute, just press that. If you want to stop it, press that and hit that. Okay, so the last page that we've got within type, when I press the type button, is the sync option. This is basically looking at whether the sample pad will sync to the other sample pads or sync to the internal Traktor clock as well. If they're switched off, then the sample will just play at whatever tempo it was meant to be played at. If they're switched on, then those pads will obviously sync to the internal clock of Traktor. Having this feature switched on is really useful because it means that all of your samples are going to sync and play in time with one another. So if we come back out of the type button again, we can have a look. The next button that we've got along here is we've got a size button. If I play a sample and then press the size button, I can vary the size of the sample that's playing. And what this means is I can either play a small portion of the sample or I can extend the sample out. What you have to bear in mind though is if your sample is only a bar long and you extend it to 2 bars, you're going to have 1 bar of audio and then a bar of silence, which may be what you want, but obviously it may not be as well. To change the size of a particular pad, all you have to do is hold down the pad that you're interested in. Straight away what the F1 will do is it will tell me the size setting that it's on at the moment. I can then go through and I can change those sizes. Okay, all the way down to 164. To get back to the default value, if I just push the encoder down, I go straight back to 1 again, okay? I can go all the way up to 32 beats, okay? But bearing in mind, again, if your sample isn't 32 beats long, you're going to have a lot of silence at the end of it. So go back to 1 again. Each pad is independent of one another, so you can have a different size setting for each individual pad. And you'll see that as you push them all through, most of them are defaulted to 1, but you can set them all to different sizes depending on what you want to do. Okay, let's go back and put the ones that I've changed onto 1. So to come back out of the size option, all I've got to do is press size again, and then I'm back into the main window of the F1. If we jump over to here, we've got a reverse button. Now, reverse is fairly obvious in what it does. It reverses the sample whilst it's playing. But we've got to realise how we activate reverse, and there's different ways in which we can activate the reverse. So if I press reverse button, nothing happens, okay? If I press reverse and then hold down a pad, and then take my finger back off the pad again, it will continue to play back. If I want to lock reverse on, what I have to do is press reverse, press the pad that I want to reverse, and then take my finger off of reverse first. That will then lock the reverse function on, and that sample will continue to play in a reverse mode. To get it unlocked again, I have to press reverse again, press the pad, take my finger off, and take my finger off of reverse. And again, that's independent, so each sample could be set to play in reverse or set to play forwards, depending on how you would want to do it. The next button that we're going to look at now is actually we're going to start looking at some of these multi-function buttons underneath. As you'll notice on the artwork, there's always some titles that have got a greyed out area, and basically this means that there's an underlying function to that button, and the way that you access that underlying function is by pressing the shift button first of all. The beauty of the F1 is that you can change the colours of the pads to your own needs. Let me just stop this sample. It may be that we're importing all of our own audio content into the F1 and using it within the remix decks, and we're not using any of the remix content that's come with NI at all. It would be a good idea to be able to colour code things. So it might be that you want to colour code vocals to green. It might be that you want to colour code percussion hits to yellow. It's entirely up to you. And if you've got a colour coding system that works for you, you can actually bespoke the pads so that it follows this as well. So to change the colour of a pad, first thing we need to press is shift, then we hit the reverse button, which takes us into the colour option, okay? Let's say that we want to change the colour of this top right pad here. If I press that pad, what you'll notice on the screen now is a colour palette has appeared here, but also a colour palette has appeared on the F1 as well. Whichever colour I want that pad to now go to, I just press the corresponding colour. So let's say we're going to take it and we're going to go for a turquoise. You'll notice now when it goes back, that pad has been changed to turquoise when I come out of the colour mode, and also as well, the corresponding colour within the sample slot has changed as well. There's another way by which you can change the colour, which is slightly quicker if you want to do it on the move. Again, go into the colour mode, press down the pad that you want to change, and then just move the encoder. And you'll notice that when I'm doing that, the encoder is actually changing colour as well. So let's say we were going to go for that turquoise there. Again, hit the reverse, and that pad will have changed colour. And not only has the pad changed colour, but obviously the corresponding sample slot has changed colour as well. Let's play a sample. Okay, let's have a look at this second button along now, which is the pitch button. Again, to access it, I've got to remember to hit shift and then type, because that will take me into the pitch function. And it's exactly the same as colour or speed or size, in that whatever pad you want to affect, you've got to press the sample pad firstly. So if I press this pad here, again, what it's doing is it's chucking up what pitch it's automatically default set to at the moment, okay? Well, this is set to 0, okay? If I move it up to 12, I can go to 12 semitones above. And if I move it down, I can go 12 semitones below as well, okay? Obviously, this is going to be really useful for trying to bring different samples of different pitches together so that everything stays within the same key signature. Again, it's a simple thing of if I want to go back to what the default value was, all I need to do is press down on there, and then I'm back into 0, 0 again. And again, all of these pads are independent of one another, so you can have different pitch settings for each pad. So to come back out of it again, press the type button and you're out again. The other thing that we've got to look at here now is we've got to look at the speed, okay? So speed relates to how quickly is that sample being played. Is it being played at its normal speed, half speed, double speed? Again, to access it, shift and speed takes me into it. If I then press the pad that I'm interested, well, we're playing pad A, so it makes sense to affect that one. Press that down. At the moment, we're on the default of 1. Okay, we can start going slower if we want to, or again, push down to get back to 1 if we want to speed it up. Okay, and then to go back to 1 again, we just push down again. This is useful for being creative with your samples, and actually you can create new melody lines with synth sounds that are being used. It might be that you want to get a bit glitchy with a vocal sample, and then obviously you can use the speed to start manipulating in that way. So again, to come back out of it, all I need to do is I need to press the size button, and I'm back out of it again. What you need to bear in mind when you're using the pitch, or the speed should I say, to change, is whether or not you've got key lock set on or not, because this is going to affect whether or not you hear the changes in the pitch, okay? So if you are finding that you're moving the speed and nothing's happening, do go back in and check to see whether or not the key lock is set on or not. If we move up to the top here now, what we have is we have an edit button, okay? So again, to enter into the edit mode, I need to press Shift and Edit, and that takes me in. The first thing that I'm presented with is CP. CP just basically means cut and paste. And what that means is whatever pad I press and then choose a destination pad, the pad that I pressed first of all will be cut and pasted onto the new pad. So let's have a look. At the moment, I'm on High Bright 125. And let's say I want to copy this sample onto this pad. All I need to do is press that one and then press the destination pad. And then that's it then. And if you look back onto the screen as well, you'll notice now that it's been copied across. If we move on to the next page, what I've actually got is I've got a cut and paste function now. So whichever destination pad I choose, that will take up the sample from the original pad of where it came from. And what I mean by that is if I move this pad from here to here, it will actually cut the sample out of that pad and put it onto that one. So if I press that pad there, that's my destination pad, and you'll notice it stopped playing now as well, because obviously I've taken it out and I've got rid of it. The last 2 pages that we've got within this bit is we have an offset. An offset just basically relates to the starting point of the sample, okay? So if I want to look at the start of this sample, if I hold down this pad, again, a numeric value jumps out at me. I can either bring the start of that sample backwards or take the start of the sample forwards. And you'll notice that when I'm moving the encoder, the start point of the relative sample is moving at the same time as well. The next one I've got is I've got nudge. And nudge just basically does exactly the same as the offset, but it just moves it in much smaller increments. So with offset, we're actually moving in 16th steps. And with nudge, we're moving in 16ths of a 16th step. So what that just means is we're moving in much, much smaller increments. And again, if I push down on the pad that I want to move, you'll notice that the beat grid of that sample is moving at the same time as well. And if ever you want to go back to the default value on any of these, literally just push down on the encoder and it takes you back to the start again, okay? So I'm going to come back out of this now. So to come back out of edit again, I just need to remember to press the relevant button. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to completely unload a whole remix set, okay? So the best way to do that is just literally to hit Shift and Capture. And now what the F1 is presenting me with, it gives me various options. I can either choose to delete all of page 1, all of page 2, all of page 3, or all of page 4. I can also choose to actually unload the entire remix set in one go if I want to, okay? Now I'm in the unload bit and it's flashing at me, so it's telling me that if I push down on the encoder, it will get rid of everything. So let's do that. Okay, and you can see now when we look back onto deck A within the remix set that nothing's on there. I'm just going to load something quickly again, okay? So if we go into the browse mode, and again, I don't want to look over on my directly on the left, but if I wanted to, I would just hit Shift and then move the encoder. All I'm going to do is find something and I'm going to load it in and just push down on the encoder, and there we go, it's all loaded back in. It will load back into its default state of what it was before. If you make different changes to a remix set and you want to keep them, the best way to do it is to go up here, rename your remix set. Okay, so let's say we're going to call this Remix Moon Crickets 1, hit enter, and then simply to save this now, all I need to do is grab hold of it from here, drag it down and drop it into that playlist. And then if we look at the bottom here, that new remix set has been created. If I want to export that remix set, it's just literally a case of highlighting it, right-clicking on it, and then hitting Export Remix Set, okay? It will ask you to name it, and it will ask you for the destination. It will export it as a tracks file, which is specific to the remix set, okay? And then when you open that tracks file back up again, it will open up within the remix slots, and any changes that you've made, i.e. any parameters that you've changed on here, any pitch settings, any speed settings, any color settings, they will all be saved within that tracks file as well. Let's go back up to the Moon Crickets. Okay, so the next button that we've got is we've got the capture button. What the capture button allows us to do is it allows us to take audio from a track deck and put it into one of the remix decks. First thing you've got to do is you've got to tell the capture button where to listen to. You can capture audio from a track deck or from the loop recorder, okay? But you can't capture audio from a remix deck. So to tell F1 where it needs to listen to, if you press down on the capture button, what it's telling me at the moment is that it's listening to deck B, okay? If I move that, it's telling me that I can either take audio from the loop recorder or from whatever track decks I've got set up. Well, I've only got one track deck set up at the moment, and that's B, so it will only present B to me. But now what I've told it is that I want the capture to listen to deck B. Okay, so if we enter into capture mode now and just take our finger off of it, the capture button will blink at us so that we know that we're within the capture mode. I can change the size of the capture, i.e. the amount of audio that I want to grab, and I can go all the way down to a 132, all the way up to 32 beats or 8 bars, okay? So what we're going to do is I'm going to start the track playing, and I'm just going to start pinching some audio out of it. So if I press play, that will start to play now. If I push down on the encoder, it will set a loop, okay? And you can see that loop setting point is in there now, okay? It's a 4-beat loop because that was the number that was in it. In the same way as you can change the loop settings with the S2 or the S4, you can also change the size of the loop using the F1 as well. If I move that up to 8 now, you'll see that that's giving me an 8-beat loop, and I can go all the way down to a 2-beat loop if I wanted to, okay? I'm going to keep that on a 4-beat loop at the moment. I can also scroll through using the beat jump function from the F1, okay? If I hold down shift and move that to the left, you'll see that I've jumped back 4 beats now, okay? And this is a really useful way to scroll through your audio and to grab samples out of it on the fly, okay? Let's say I'm happy with that 4-beat loop and I want to actually assign that to one of the pads now. All I simply need to do is press the pad where I want it to go, okay? So let's move along and let's go to there, okay? And let's grab another loop. Okay, that loop's been grabbed into there as well now, okay? So if I want to come out of this loop and I want the track to continue to play, all I need to do is press down on the encoder and it will continue to play as well, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab another 8 now. Okay, and it might be I just want to put that onto the next available pad. It might be that I want to put it on the pad down at the bottom of the setting as well, which I can do. It's entirely up to me where I put the pad within the remix decks, okay? And again, to come out of it again, all you need to do is press that and it comes off. Okay, and to put it back on, and to take it off, okay, and that will just keep on running around like that. And again, whichever pad I press, that's where it's going to. Obviously at the moment I'm putting the same sample onto multiple pads, but that's just to show you how easy it is to take something off, okay? So if I press play just to stop this one now, okay, what we can look at is we can actually look at other ways of capturing audio as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press play again and get the track to run. But actually what I'm going to do is just shift back a little bit, okay? So we're going to go from there. And again, to scroll through in the beat jump mode, all I'm doing is hitting shift and then the encoder, and whatever number I've got in there, that's how many beats I'm moving by as well, okay? So we've got other ways in which we can capture audio as well. Depending on what number's in there, if I just hold down the capture button, first of all I'm going to come out of loop, okay? If I just hold the capture button and press a pad you'll see that it's filling up with samples as I take them as well, okay? Another way that I can do that is just hold the capture button and press down on the encoder. When I do it this way though, what you'll notice is that the next available slot within the remix deck is set up, so I can't predetermine where it's going to go. It will just fill up the next available slot there, and the next one that it will fill up now is that one there, okay? Which can be useful if you're just looking to fill slots up very quickly. Again though, if you want to determine where that sample is going to go, a better way of doing it is pressing down on capture and pressing the pad of where you want it to go. So I'm just going to hit stop here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to unload everything now, but I'm going to do it in a couple of ways so you can see how you get rid of one sample on its own, or how you get rid of a page of samples, or how you get rid of the entire remix deck, okay? So if I just want to delete off a couple of pads, let's say that I'm not very happy with the samples that I've got, if I hold shift and delete and keep my fingers depressed down on those, I can then just go along and push the relevant pad that I want to get rid of, okay? And I can delete off a whole page in that way if I wanted to. Another way that I can do it, at the moment I'm on page 4, that D basically means delete. So if I was to press down on the encoder now, it would delete everything that was on 4. Let's find something, we've got some stuff on 3, so let's just get rid of those, okay? So if I push down, you can see now all of those sample slots have become available. If I wanted to get rid of the entire remix set in one go, in the same way that I showed you earlier on, just hold down shift and delete, move it until it says unload, everything's flashing at you, push down on it and it's all disappeared. Okay, so finally I'm just going to show you a couple of little things that will hopefully make life a little bit easier for you, and they're kind of shortcuts to change some of the parameters of the pad. So the first thing I'm going to do again is I'm going to load a remix set in. So hit the browse button. I need to be looking in my directory on the left hand side, so if I hold down the shift button and then scroll up to track collection, find where my remix sets are, take my finger off of shift, we're going to go for Moon Crickets again because it's already highlighted, push down on it, Moon Crickets will load in, come back out of the browse mode, okay? As you look at each of the samples, there is a pitch and a gain setting that you can change. Well, we've already looked at how to change the pitch by hitting shift and type and then looking at the pitch setting from there. If I start a sample playing, I'm just going to change the quantize down. Again, I've got two ways in which I can change the quantize. I can either do the numeric value here, or if you look, the color-coded pads all relate to different quantize settings as well. The bottom one being 32 beats or 8 bars, the top one being a quarter of a beat, or 1 beat. Okay, so if we put it on like that, at the moment the quantize settings is on a quarter, so I can just keep on firing it around like that. It may be that if you're importing audio from lots of different sources, you've got a fairly varied gain structure that you want to change, okay? So even if all of your volumes are up on full, some of your samples still might be really quiet, okay? So if we start bringing another sample in as well, okay, it might be that actually, even when I've got that fader all the way up, I still feel that that pad is too quiet. If I bring the fader down and hold shift, as I move this volume fader up now, you'll notice that the gain setting is changing, okay? If I want to increase the volume, if I start at the top, or increase the gain structure, sorry, start at the top, move the fader down, and you'll notice that the gain is moving up as well. I can go to a maximum of plus 12 dB, okay? So when I bring that back up now, you'll hear it's much louder, okay? It's probably a little bit too loud for what we want. So what I'm going to do is take that volume back down again, hold the shift button, and this time move the volume fader up, and you'll see the gain is moving down. So let's set that at about plus 6 dB. When I bring that fader all the way back up to the top now, what that means is that that sample is running at 6 decibels when that volume fader is all the way up to the top, okay? Really useful feature, because what it allows you to do is set all of your gain structures so that they all sound the same. Okay, let's have a look at these ones at the moment, okay? If I press play on this one, if we go back to the type, this is set so that when I press the button once, it will play all the way through. Let's go back in and just change the type of that pad. Okay, so we're going to type, come round to trigger type, and if you remember, purple corresponded to only having to press the pad once in order for it to play in its entirety. Yellow was that we had to keep our finger on it. I'm going to change this one to yellow, okay, and come back out of type now and you'll see. Okay, but let's imagine I just want to lock or latch that pad on just for once, okay? If I press the pad and then press the bottom mute or stop button, what it actually does is it actually locks that pad off at the same time as well, which is a useful feature because it might be that you've been triggering a sample with your finger, and then actually what you want to do is to be able to trigger the sample, lock it on, and then move on to another sample and play again. I'll show you one more time how I did that. See, at the moment the sample only plays whilst my finger's on it. If I press the pad and then press this bottom one here, I can take my finger away and that sample will stay latched on now, or will stay on until it reaches the end.